All right, welcome back to the More Than Different podcast. Co-hosts Brendan and Colin McNamara. Colin, I got something on my chest, and we're at the grocery
Talk to
store
me.
yesterday. I want to tell the people we're in Stop and Shop picking something up for dinner, and we're in one of the aisles, and there's got to be 250 bottles of mayo.
Yeah,
Bunch of
we
different
counted them all.
kinds too. I saw some ridiculous kinds of mayo. And so we wanted to
I didn't
take
even know they had different kinds of mayo.
one kind is too many. I said to Colin, I said, if I stood there all day, I think I could gag and throw up.
Now this intro is probably not for the mayo lovers.
No, but we did take to Instagram to see what our following thinks. And we did two different polls because we had come from Qdoba right before going to Stop and Shop. So we got a little Chipotle Qdoba poll. Chipotle overwhelming winner, 75% of our following said yes, Chipotle is better than Qdoba, to 25% who said Qdoba. And then mayo lovers and mayo haters, we had, what was it, 64% mayo lovers, 36% haters. Jeez, I don't know about our
Yeah,
font.
maybe we should have scrapped this intro because a majority of our following loves mayo. It's
Yeah,
safe to say.
yeah. So
Um, yeah,
just had to get that.
I'm gonna keep my votes anonymous, and I don't know if people are gonna like what I have to say, but nevertheless, I know where my allegiance lies.
Chipper. You're a chipper
No,
kind of. You're a chipper
no,
kind
I'm
of
not a
guy.
chipper guy. I'm not a chipper guy.
You're a chipper guy.
I'm not a chipper guy.
But I will say, for a long portion of my life, though, I hated mayo, and we'll get off this, but it gets a good lesson that we're going to touch on today. Is I hated mayo, but that was because my dad hates mayo. Our dad hates mayo and
We've
eggs.
never had mayo in the house.
No, never, not once. And we used to not have eggs. Then I used to never eat eggs, and then I started eating eggs. And I was like, oh, they're good. I just didn't, simply because my dad hated them, so I just assumed they're terrible. Then I ate them.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Scrambies or a
Yeah,
nice egg
there's some
sandwich.
food that over time, if you grew up hating, like sometimes it flips a switch at some point randomly
Yeah,
at some random meal, and you're like, you know what? This is actually pretty good. And then
but you want to know one that has not flipped the switch, even after trying it on multiple occasions, and even trying it without knowing, just stands out, and it's just mayo. So
worse is when you ask for no mayo on a sub and they
and
give
they
you
give you
mayo.
mayo. Oh,
It's a killer. It's a
it's
backbreaker. I
terrible.
mean, it's so hard to forget. Like you can't misunderstand and misinterpret no mayo. Like, what
No,
does that sound like?
right. I know.
Does
Some
that
people,
sound like more mayo? Does that sound like, can I please have more mayo? Or does
yeah,
that sound like no mayo?
no mayo. The worst is, especially the waiters will look at you like you're alien. They're like,
Well,
no mayo.
it's a miscommunication on between the servers and the cooks.
Yeah.
Now, hey,
So
communication. You're gonna like this one, B. Communication is the name of the game.
it's the name of the game.
It's
Uh,
another name of the game.
but here's the lesson to take away from that, and we're going to get into on a deeper level, is you have to have a ever expanding approach in life. Now, for a while, like I said, I would say I hate mayo, but I had never actually tried it. And I tried it, I hate it. So I stand on that island. I don't like it. But you can't say, and you see this a lot. You have people who immediately will, and we all fall victim to it, and we do it. But you have we have a tendency to write off people, write off foods, write off experiences, write off maybe new habits or hobbies that we could implement before ever actually trying them. And if we're going to continuously write things off, we can't then be upset when we're sitting around feeling bored, lonely, or purposeless. And I think that is the greater lesson from this, but this is what we want to touch on in this podcast, is the importance of realizing how much control we have over our lives, and who we become, always becoming this mindset of constantly and relentlessly looking for more ways to elevate yourself, and seeking opportunities that could have a profound impact on your life, whether it's something as small as a food, like where we just mentioned, or whether again it's putting yourself out there to meet people that could end up being really important people in your life, or whether again it's hobbies or new habits that have a dramatic effect. I think it's just the willingness to have that approach and that outlook on looking for ways to expand yourself. So that is what we're touching on here today, CMAC. Let's get away from the Mayo idea, but I want to hear your thoughts just on that.
Yeah, no, it's tough. It's tough to get me out of my mind now, but I'll try and pivot. So I like what we're getting at. I like the story we're trying to tell. The idea is continual growth, right? The idea of being able to adapt, expand, and elevate yourself in as many dimensions or avenues as you can think of. And you raise something where being able to try new things, and it popped into my mind, like, what do we define as like trying something, from the perspective of you give it a shot and then you either keep going or you give it up.
Right.
Like, is it valid to say, if there's something you're trying to implement into your life as either a habit or a new goal, something that you're trying to chase after, is it safe to say a valid effort is trying to implement this into your life to the point where it could become a habit or not, or trying it once, or giving 1 day's worth of effort, or would it be giving 90 days or a week? Because there's different levels and different perspectives of effort. And what someone might say, they tried one thing once, or you say, hey, I gave it a shot. That could mean I gave it 15 minutes and then you gave it
Right.
up. But I digress. So, I like to go back to, it's a prime example transitioning from your educational days, from high school and college, and transitioning into the working life, being a lot more independent and not having that schedule with fewer responsibilities. I think when you're trying to continually grow, obviously when you're growing up, you have this set persona, this character that you're building up. You're trying to figure out who you are. And when you're growing up, right, your body's still in development, and you're trying to figure out what that may be. And maybe you cling on to one specific thing. And right, in the day and age where mental health is such an issue, that you try to embrace at least one thing, never mind wrapping your head around multiple aspects of life to embrace as your character, right? So for example, I mean, I don't know about you, but obviously, we've been in the same household, but like embracing an athlete as just the overall persona,
Yeah, big time. What do you mean
right?
you
And
don't
then
know about me? I'm, I'm
no,
the
I
same
know.
as
I'm
you.
just kidding. I know. Yeah. So like, us embracing ourselves as athletes growing up, obviously in a town where athletics is definitely important. And then kind of being coined that athlete, just like the guy who's the athlete who plays all these different sports. It's like that's what you're initially known for.
Yeah.
And there comes a time where when high school ends, you're not that guy. Like no
No.
one knows who you are when you go into that next chapter. When you
Right.
leave school, then when you leave college, when you get a new job, then when maybe you'll change cities. So like you have to constantly begin to reflect and figure out, all right, what are my new goals, or what are these passions that I need to build? Like, what am I trying to, what's my why here? And then basically rebuild from there, because your persona can't be an athlete your whole life. You need to figure out and pivot to, like you've mentioned, continually grow, um, and expand. But, do you have anything that you felt like you've needed to expand and like elevate yourself in? Obviously,
Yeah.
you're kind of in the midst of that college to high school to college transition.
Yeah, big time. I'm sure a lot of our listeners can relate to that experience, that feeling of just associating yourself and your own self perception as kind of one thing. I felt that for a while. I was always just being an athlete growing up. Then it became solely basketball. And then to be quite fair, and I think with hindsight now, what's been so special about this brand and now running this is that it's allowed me to see so much more in who I am and how I want to, both how I want to think of myself, how I view myself, and things I'm capable of, and my talents, and how I approach my life, along with how others may perceive me. I think that's what has been so, in terms of what it's running more than different, and all the opportunities we've and challenges we face. What it's shown me is uh, that there's more to yourself. And once you're willing to look for that, there is so much more in yourself than you thought you had. And I would have never thought we would start a business when I was 16. You were 19 or 20. Um, and so once we did that, it became where, and we started figuring out what our mission was. And I think I want to be clear, this idea of more than, when we say more than different, that's what we're getting at in this podcast. Being more than, it's about actively seeking out opportunities and ways and taking initiative to look to maximize your potential. And I think we always cling to this cliche of life is a journey, and a journey implies a destination. And I think scrapping that and more so looking at it like we are always becoming. We're not looking to become one thing. Our destination, our end point is going to be the end of life, death. That's our destination. But
You're getting dark,
from
baby.
now till then, it's we're always evolving, we're always growing. If you stay stagnant, then the world is just going to pass you by, and it's an unforgiving place. So, um, yes, I think starting to see more in who I am, and the things that I'm interested in, both on a academic level, from running this business. This has become, I'd say, the main way I view myself. And then still, what it's allowed me to do is love basketball. But I think a lesson, or for people who maybe still feel stuck in that single-minded outlook, is that's okay. But what you can embrace about that, when you find something you really cling to, even if it's one thing, is what you can take from that when you eventually do translate it into other things. What is that's what was so great, I'm sure, for you as well, about finding a sport that I just loved, is you put so much into it because you love it, and you start to see results, and you get better and better, and you keep becoming a better player. And then you realize, okay, that same paradigm of that applies in anything else. So yeah, I think I've expanded myself, and I really know who I am at this stage in my life, and there's a lot more to know. And similar to always becoming, we're always figuring it out, and that's something to embrace.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're not going to pick something up new one day and then master it.
No.
It's the what's hard about constantly evolving and constantly growing is the fact that the older you get, the harder it is for you to be willing to
Yeah.
learn new
Great
things,
point.
right?
Great point. Yeah.
And starting from scratch, because you've been around for so long, you've learned so much, you've already been through school. It's just the state of the mind that you're in, it just becomes harder to be able to soak in new information, retain it, and then be able to develop that. Oh, you also, you just come so far. So the longer, the later it gets, the more challenging it is. So that's why being able to build these habits and this consistency to, try and maximize your potential and elevate who you are, right? Especially out right after school, and understanding, I'm more than an athlete, right? It'll click at some point. The the apt, the need, the want to soak in knowledge,
Yeah.
right? I wouldn't necessarily say I loved going to school every day. Like I loved, there are a lot of classes where I was like, I'll get the work done, I'll submit it, but I'm not gonna, a lot of those classes I wasn't soaking in all the information and remembering that by the next fall. Um, but I was definitely remembering the plays from last year for my basketball season. So it clicks at different times for everybody. Obviously, now when I got to college, I definitely grew a passion for engineering in school and wanting to try and become an expert in a specific field. And then obviously understanding that, outside of sports in school, which at sometimes felt like it was required, being able to try and go out and do something for yourself, right? Being able
Yeah.
to try and do something on your own terms. And obviously, we kind of started more than different, kind of in the midst of my college days, to be able to, right, not only figure out what our passion was, um, but to help people realize who they can become.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the basis of this pod, right? That the idea that everyone has room to elevate, and even in the state that you're in, you are still have your own superpowers. And basically, it's like a create your own player. It's like in video games when you can create your own player. Like we are constantly building that idea where you're constantly just every day growing new attributes and trying to add new skills to your create my own player. And everyone loves how fun it is to be able to create an animated character in a video game and be able to
Yeah.
play around with that. We've done our whole lives.
And that's because, yeah, you have, when you're doing that in a video game, you have all the control. And I think there's obviously different barriers, but you have to realize that we have control over our lives and our emotions. I wrote a blog recently and I won't get into it, but part of what I was saying is like we have control over our emotions. And so much we look at it's like us versus our mind. We're at war with ourselves or with our feelings. And we have to realize we have control to take action and make changes or different edits to our lifestyle, whether it means implementing something, whether it means taking something out. And I think you raised a great point about as you get older, it is harder to change or have a willingness to change. And I think that raises such a great point. But what we rather should look at is when we're older, we have more experience and knowledge to be able, and once we're willing to admit to our naivete, said that right. I was practicing that. I know I said that right. Our lack of experience or our lack of knowledge, then because we are wiser and older, we can be more methodical about what we need to assess and what needs to be better or more complete in ourselves. And that obviously comes with an aspect of humility, being able to admit that you don't have it all figured out and there's nothing wrong with that. But you having a willingness and a curiosity to try new things and see how it'll work. And there'll be some disappointment. There'll be some, shit, that didn't work for me. Or I met a new person and she's not the one, or he's not the one, or he's not a good friend of mine that I want. So what? Like, you're not going to
You
find.
gotta you gotta go out there and give it your best shot though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, you do.
That's
Exactly.
and that's what you'll leave no regrets. That's what you'll leave with the feeling that, you know, I'm not gonna look back and regret when you look back at something, you regret when you didn't give enough. You don't
Yeah, yeah,
regret when you gave everything, because even if it didn't go your way, right? As people, we grow from that.
yeah,
You don't necessarily grow in the best ways when you are constantly giving 50% effort and not showing that you care enough about things that you're spending time on. Um, yeah, it's a quick anecdote on a side point, but yeah, but like, when we're talking about this idea of elevating in ourselves and in our persona, and the fact that obviously we shouldn't bin ourselves into this group of being one-dimensional people, having this one-dimensional persona, right? Obviously, having the app to understand that we are very complex and sophisticated people. Like humans are a very advanced multidimensional species in itself.
There it is.
Um, and so right, if we begin to understand that and apply that to ourselves, right, there really is no limit to how great you can be as a person. It's just, but I think what it really roots in, and we've had many podcasts on this, is a mastering the monotonous,
Yeah.
being able to build a routine so that you can actually give your best effort forward, right? Starting with something really, really small of a goal, whether, right, and I'm going to put this example out there. I threw this out there to Brendan, and I think the new year, or maybe it was last year, is I told him, hey, and look, I necessarily don't read the most books in the world. I don't mind reading, but I told him, I said, hey, this year I'm gonna read enough books to stack every book I've read, and it's gonna touch the ceiling in our house. And our ceiling is probably about 9 feet, I'd say, give or take a couple. Um, and so, do the math. You're probably looking at, you know, I don't know, probably 100 books, maybe.
Yeah, a lot of books.
A lot of books, nevertheless. And I necessarily haven't read like over 5 books in the year before, but I was just like, you know what, this is the year, it's the
You're feeling
fucking year.
ambitious.
Um, and you gotta love the ambition, but if it's just empty words, which it turned out it was, then because I felt like it was such a lofty goal that all of a sudden, towards the end of the year, I'm starting to look at the bottom. I'm at the bottom of the mountain trying to look at the top, and I'm breaking my neck, and I'm like, all right, I really, didn't plan this out well. Basically saying, start small. So let's plan 15 minutes a day of reading. If like you're trying to expand on your reading, if you're trying to become a better computer programmer, maybe wake up 30 minutes earlier now and get in front of your computer and start coding for 30 minutes a day before you get to work, right? Setting small goals so that after a month or two, once you build that habit, then you start to expand on it. Then it becomes an hour. Then all of a sudden, right? And that's something Brandon and I aren't necessarily great at. And that's kind of why M2D we felt has been a little more stagnant. I think we have an immense amount of potential. And, my confidence in the fact that this will be our career at some point. This is going to be a business that's going to help take care of our families at some point. I still believe in that. But in order for that to happen, especially when this isn't a full-time job, there needs to be a level of consistency that I hold to myself and obviously on your end as well. So yeah, it's something in everything that we speak on, we're trying to develop that as well at the same time. We haven't mastered it at all, but we feel like we believe in everything that we're saying, and we're trying to apply this just as we go as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the key thing. It's not a tone of we have figured out, you guys got figured out. We're figuring out along the way. And I think when you articulate the things that you're trying to do, it helps you gain a better understanding of what you want to do. It's like studying. When you study something, you write it out, you want to say it. It helps you remember it. And that's the same with these concepts, or just approaches and just reminders to have when living your life. I think one big thing to almost round this all out is you just almost have to look at life, and that's very vague, but it's like a big school of opportunity. You have to embrace the student mentality of looking for more opportunities to grow, evolve, challenge yourself, make yourself uncomfortable. And there is always more knowledge and experience to obtain. And that's going to offer us new ways to refine who we are and elevate who we are. And we say that a lot. That's right in our core mission, is elevation. And when you demand that of yourself, then you're going to have enough impact on the people around you. And when you see more in yourself and you demand more of yourself, then others will, it's contagious. And that's what
Yeah,
we're looking to do.
once you start demanding the best and elevating yourself, then you're going to start to demand that from others, and that's when you start to build build a very strong community, strong bond around you where, right, you start to reach very special places that you couldn't reach yourself, right? The highest of peaks is reached when you're on a team. It's really hard to eclipse the apex without having a strong team around you. And so being able to, like you said, elevate yourself and hold yourself to that standard where you're constantly holding yourself accountable and being consistent with elevating and constant improvement. And then from there, now once you mastered that, then being able to having your team around you, holding them to that same exact standard. That's when the sky's the limit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think for me, when people ask what do you love about the brand? How long are you gonna keep doing it or whatever? I think the most rewarding part for me, there's a lot of things, but one of the most is it has in the 3.5 coming on 4 years this June that we've done it, that we've run more than different. I've seen so much more in who I am, and I've made alterations to my lifestyle. I've added people in my life, subtracted people from my life, added habits and interests, found new things. And the biggest thing is then just wanting to inspire others to see the same and look for the same in their lives. That's what we're trying to do. That's what I think is really
It's the name of the game.
it's the name of the game is find more in yourself and encourage others, empower others to find more in who they are and continue to become. We're always becoming. We don't arrive, never arriving, always becoming. Only time we arrive is when it's all said and done. There's nowhere else to go. You're just
And what I think is a nice segue to probably our next podcast is the idea that when you're in this continual growth stage and elevation, and obviously when you're on this upward motion, you're not going to have mastered anything. And so understanding that, embrace the fact that you are in the middle of the journey. Don't try to act like you have it all figured out, like you're at the peak, right? It's right. You want to, right? It's the idea of to be rather than to seem, right? You want to act who you are rather than act like you're something else that you're not. And just embrace the journey and embrace where you are and where you foresee yourself going. And once you be able to build those habits, routines, and back that up with your passion, your why, then you're really going to have something special, and it's going to amount to greatness. And build a team around yourself, and I'll see where that takes you.
love that. So who knew that a intro that began with a rant about mayo could turn into that?
Who knew that a rant about mayo, that two people who hate mayo is talking about mayo? Who knew that could turn into something special?
Something special, man. Well, hey,
Wow.
to our listeners who made it this far, we appreciate you. Like we keep saying, we're gonna get more and more consistent with these. This is a big period of time for us. Colin and I have some more time, so look for some big things come with more than different. And like we said, just always strive to elevate when any opportunity that presents itself is available, and elevate. When you do that, you'll elevate the destination at which you will arrive when it's all said and done. Always becoming, never arriving. All right.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Shout out to our listeners. Appreciate y'all. We'll be back.
Thank you. Later.